Don't be fooled by people you see promoting Common Core as the way to improve schools in America. Don't be fooled by the claims that this is a state-led effort. Common Core is not some wonderful new idea that will help student achievement. In fact, this is a repackaged group of ideas called standards and testing that's been around for over 20 years. Yes, American schools are in trouble. Graduates are not ready for work or for life, but standards and testing are not improving performance. This presentation will tell you the story from a Colorado perspective. We need to stop this failed strategy and move on to real reform. In the 1990s, during the Clinton administration, an ambitious education reform program called Goals 2000 was passed. Roots for the current standards initiative were established at this time. In 1996, Achieve Inc. was formed. This organization was created to support standards-based education reform efforts across the states. It was funded by foundations and businesses including Gates Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation of New York. In 2009, the Common Core state standards were published. This effort was not led by the states. The work was led by Achieve Inc. and other advocates of a national school curriculum. In 2009, the Department of Education, as part of the stimulus bill, awarded funds to states that adopted the new Common Core state standards. To qualify for any Race to the Top grants, states were required to establish a longitudinal database of student-level data. Also, 2 consortiums were established and funded to develop assessments, PARCC and SBAC. States were expected to join one of the 2 consortiums. This chart provides some additional detail regarding Common Core. Standards are heavily weighted to emphasize 21st century skills such as critical thinking. Most of the funding for Common Core came from the Gates Foundation and the U.S. Department of Education. There is growing opposition to the standards. Common Core was never field tested. For your information, the University of Arkansas professor and reading expert Sandra Stotsky served on the Common Core Validation Committee, but with 4 other members refused to sign off. You should know that David Pullmann, known as the architect of the Common Core state standards, has never been a school teacher. On the chart are listed some of the many objections to the standards. There are many, many more. Common Core and the associated testing and data collection requirements create a big opportunity for companies supplying resources to support education. Common Core creates a need for new textbooks, computers for online testing, teacher training, learning materials such as workbooks, lesson plans, posters, IT support, and expanded broadband internet connections. New material aligned to the Common Core may also influence resources available to homeschool and private school markets. The logos displayed represent only a few of the many special interest groups that are benefiting by this initiative. In 1995, Colorado developed Colorado Academic Standards, and in 2001, Colorado began a statewide testing program called CSAP, Colorado Student Assessment Program. During the 2008 legislative session, SB 08212 was passed. The legislation focused on standards, not curriculum, and called for new assessments and updated standards. The new Colorado academic standards were published in December 2009 for all the subject areas listed. This effort was to prepare students for post-secondary and workforce readiness. In other words, ability to enter college or the workforce without academic remediation. In August 2010, the Colorado Board of Education voted 4-3 to adopt Common Core. Colorado academic standards were revised to align to the Common Core standards for English language arts and math. Legislation was also passed to align educator evaluation with the assessment activity. New guidelines called for 50% of the educator evaluation to be based on student test scores. A new assessment program to measure standards that were common between the 1995 standards and the new standards was introduced in 2011 called TCAP, Transitional Colorado Assessment Program. In 2012, Colorado joined the PARCC. The PARCC is a multi-state activity promoted by corporate money and federal funds. There is concern that the new tests developed by PARCC will reduce emphasis on testing knowledge. Instead, tests will include more essays, open response, and computer tasks, therefore more subjective. Total state and district level tests exceed 15 hours each year for students in 4th through 10th grade. In 2014, there will be new additional tests for science and social studies. PARCC tests will be in pilot mode for 2014. This ambitious program is raising concerns as school districts evaluate equipment and internet access facilities. The new PARCC English Language Arts and Math assessments are planned to be operational in 2015. Millions of dollars, classroom time, and resources are allocated to this activity. Jefferson County is currently piloting InBloom. For your information, in December 2011, the U.S. Department of Education issued an unlawful regulation that permits educational institutions to release student records to non-governmental agencies without first obtaining parents' written consent. There is big privacy issues here. Colorado legislature passed a $1 billion school funding bill last spring, and voters will decide in November. According to John Taylor Gatto, there is abundant evidence that less than 100 hours is sufficient for a person to become totally literate and a self-teacher. Don't be panicked by scare tactics into surrendering your children to experts. We are already spending about $8,000 to $10,000 per student per year here in Colorado. So what are we getting for the money we currently spend? Here is a flowchart of the various elements of this reform effort. The term Common Core is being used to refer to all these components. Another term you will hear is high-stakes testing. This model is for all public schools, including charter schools. This is a lot of effort and expense to measure outcomes. Is this really a legitimate way to evaluate the quality of our K-12 education? Testing activity shows that student achievement is not improving. But are these measurements meaningful? If we are really interested in assessing 21st century skills, then standardized tests are not the answer. According to Professor Newkirk at the University of New Hampshire, standardized tests are ill-suited to evaluate expressive abilities, speaking and writing, and creativity in general. Also, to quote Diane Ravitch regarding the need for additional assessment activity, we already have the National Assessment of Education Progress, the NAEP, which has been making these comparisons for 20 years. So who's on first? The answer? Special interest groups and the federal government. Just follow the money. Parents are ignored. Is workforce ready a good objective? Education has historically been more than being prepared to get a job or go to college. What about life skills and responsibilities of a citizen? Teachers are ignored. Who decided that it was a good idea to cut back on classic literature in favor of information text? What bureaucrat designed all the paperwork the teachers have to fill out? Students are ignored. A lack of focus on content and curriculum will not deliver 21st century skills, and 3 weeks spent every spring testing creates a teach-to-the-test environment. Does any of this make sense? It's your tax money. These are your children. It's time to get involved, ask questions, volunteer, vote. Support opt-out of PARCC and Common Core. Speak to your local school district about how to exempt your child from the state testing program. If Colorado can get out of Common Core, then there's still work to be done on the Colorado academic standards. For example, update the objective to include citizenship. Publish assumptions about what is age-appropriate activity. Establish a better balance between skills and content. Thank you for watching this presentation.